That was beautiful. It gave me goosebumps. Give anybody else goosebumps? Whew. Good morning, every day.
Good morning.
Good morning, online every day.
Good morning.
Good morning, Facebook every day. Well, for those of you who may have forgotten since last week, I'm Reverend Ann Ray, and I have the privilege of calling this spiritual community my home, my spiritual family, and of loving up and interacting with each other and getting into all kinds of fun and mischief. And have you ever been to an annual meeting that was fun? Hours. That's right, Patty. So any of you that might be on the fence about staying for today's annual meeting, will make it worth your while. I promise. So yes, today we're talking about learning to wait. And learning to wait is not everybody's favorite thing. I don't know when it began that people started feeling so insistent. Maybe it was with instant coffee. That just crossed my mind. That human beings started feeling so insistent on everything being now. Because I'm quite sure that as people evolved and groups evolved and became civilizations, and because I know how influential Willow spoke about the influence of nature and what nature teaches us. And I know that nature has had that influence always. And nature never hurries. It may get confused, and it may think it's time to bloom prematurely, but that is not its fault. It is a confluence of circumstances around it that confuse it to thinking, oh, I didn't think it was going to be spring yet, but I guess it is, so boop. That's kind of what happened in our front yard. Boop. So what's the value of learning to wait? Why is it important? Why might we want to take a look and consider what that might add to our life experience? Well, for those of us who have a hard time waiting, it might not be until the end of my talk where you can actually get into the idea that waiting has any value. And I have compassion for you. what I can tell you from personal experience is that learning my own self, learning the value of waiting and appreciating the value of waiting and watching and things evolve and emerge in a different way. Conversations evolve and emerge in a different way. Relationships evolve and emerge in a different way. That it requires a certain awareness that we don't have when we're impatient. Because when we're impatient, whether it's tapping our internal foot or our external foot, waiting for the light to change or whatever it is, that's what we're focused on. There's no, we might wonder why there's all this conversation about how, I spoke of it this morning in the meditation, how we can feel peaceful and we can bring peace all the time. Well, when we're tapping our foot, we're too busy tapping our foot. We're too busy going, oh, come on. That ought to be ready now, or they ought to be here by now, or whatever ought to be by now. Who says? Divine timing is an interesting thing. Because, and this is not the only situation where it's right behind you, Deanna. Joy, can you reach it? Okay. This is not the only situation where I imagine God laughing. Because we have an idea about how long something should take. Whether it's the emergence and demonstration of something that we are affirming or water boiling. We have an idea about how long something should take, and that's our idea. Time and space are human. We decided about time and space because it helped us make sense of things. It's the same motivation that causes us to name everything. Because it helps us make sense of things and to make order of things. Now, without that, how is there any order? Oh, you can't imagine. There is an order that is so exquisite, that is beyond our comprehension. And within that order is held everything. So that within that order, everything can find its own. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. Within universal order, there is an order that is beyond our comprehension. And it is so vast and so extraordinary in its capabilities that within it there is room for everything that we think is order,
Mm-hmm.
or not. Jackie, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. A student asked in class the other night about a greater good. And with everything that's going on, isn't there still a greater good? Well, I've been thinking about that question since Tuesday because I struggled with it in the moment. Not the question, but in trying to put words to something that is kind of beyond words. Not kind of, it is beyond words. And I was remembering, so I was just completing my first year of practitioner studies with all of my fellow students. And a tradition at the center that I was attending at the time, the students play, but we weren't given a script. We had to write the script and use that script to explain spiritual mind treatment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, that was all good because we had very talented people in the class. They wrote the play. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. And so the play went fine. But then we all had to stand on stage and be open to Q&A, which meant on the spot answering questions that we were still very much learning ourselves, maybe even questioning ourselves. Well, there I was. Do you remember this moment? And I was asked a question about how the law works. Because in our philosophy, there is this whole section that Ernest Holmes explains how God, the divine spirit, the universe, is love and law. And I was asked how law works. Well, our senior minister was standing with her back against the back wall. I'll never forget this in my entire life, can you tell? And I start talking, which was my first mistake. It would have been so much better had I looked at Reverend Dr. Marlene and said, oh, which is how I felt. Anyway, I started talking, and she's standing back there, and she's about this big.
Mm-hmm.
And she's about this big. You know what I mean? And she's standing back there, and she starts going, And I kept talking. And she's going, so then, here she comes. It was like a Mother May I giant step from the back of the room to the stage. And she thanked me. She was very gracious. I felt lucky that she didn't smack me or something, which would not have been her style anyway, but I was floundering. And so she thanked me, and then she very graciously answered the question. And as I was thinking about the question that I had been asked in class about, isn't there a greater good? I was feeling kind of the same. I was feeling like I needed Reverend Dr. Marlene to show up in class this coming Tuesday and answer the question. But I sat with it. I took time. I waited. Because I knew, as I often mention to all of you, that there is the one that is nearer than our breath. It is not only all things, it includes us. And that means that wisdom, that understanding, that knowing is because it is part of our being. But sometimes we have to wait until we can hear it. Because our mind is too busy talking about what it knows, or what it believes, or what it thinks it knows. Going blah, 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 blah. So I had to wait. And the waiting wasn't hard. Once I committed to waiting, because it was so important to me, and is. It was so important to me to be able to articulate the answer to this question, which is a big dang question. I knew that I had access to that answer, but I was going to have to wait for it to get through. I mean, I think about the song that Willow sang with the roots and the shoots. Oh my God, I love that. I think about, what the seed goes through as it germinates and then opens in this weird space that is completely dark, and how the germination process leads to this little tiny shoot that somehow knows that the sky is up there. I knew that if I waited, I would hear it. So the answer to the question is, of course, there is a greater good. There is an overarching nature, not just junipers, thank heavens. An overarching nature that is, if you will, the divine modus operandi. And the proof of that is that everything returns to that. Everything. You've never in your life seen a compost system more efficient than the way life is structured to regenerate. And I'm not talking about reincarnation. That's another conversation. But how life is structured to regenerate to source. Of course, there is an overarching good. There is a greater good. And the funny thing about that greater good, Marlene would have loved this. She probably would have applauded. The funny thing about that greater good is that it has no awareness of anything else, which is how it can be. And it is the only way that it can be. It has no awareness of personality differences, of behavioral choices, of anything that we humans have decided along the way makes us better. It has no awareness of that, which is how you hear me speak of unconditional love. It is how we can be unconditionally loved by this life that lives through us no matter what. No matter what. You know, it doesn't matter what anybody has to say about our lovability, or what anybody has ever said about our lovability. Because the one life, the one power, the one presence that is all life, that is all that we are, thinks we're unconditionally lovable. And it doesn't just think it, because thinking implies it could change its mind. And it's not that it doesn't have a mind, but it has a mind that doesn't work like ours. You know, it's really challenging for us to embrace the idea of this one that doesn't have human tendencies.
Yeah.
It's really a challenge, because everything should have human tendencies, right? Not right. We can be grateful every day that the life that is all life does not have human tendencies.
Yes.
Because then what we know is that there is room for us to expand the divine that is expressing through us anyway, to expand that revelation to be more like that. There is room for us to surrender, to let go to wait for old patterns to dissolve and new patterns to emerge. Remember I talked about the little seedling, right? Nothing is down there telling it. Okay, now you do this. And then you do that. And human beings think that without an instructor that we can't make significant changes in our lives just because we decide to, that we can't change the way we think if we don't have somebody holding our hand just because we decide to. Wrong. That is not the way we are formed. I have goosebumps now. We are our own authority.
Yes.
And we are our own authority in that because of the life that lives in us, as us, and through us, and all around us. Because of that, the more we lean into that, the more we align with that, the more we move towards that wisdom, that gentleness, that love, that kindness, that generosity. The more that we move toward that and away from human information, human-based wisdom, the better it gets. The easier it gets. The calmer we feel. And the idea that I presented in the meditation this morning of being peace and taking peace wherever we go and maintaining that attitude of peace, the ability to do that is unquestionable. But we have to choose it. We have to choose it. It's not that it's not there. It's not that the greater good isn't there. We have to choose it. We have to choose that awareness. We have to choose that alignment. We have to choose. And so it is.